Hey, everybody. The thing about the situation we're in right now in the United States is that a lot of people are really angry or really scared or really full of blame. And people are extraordinarily polarized, meaning they are pretty far to the extreme in one direction or another politically. Not everybody, but a lot of people. And these kinds of feelings of anger and fear don't go away when we start working on election violence prevention. People are still in a heightened emotional state, even when they're starting into the conversation about how will we prevent violence in the election cycle. In other words, this is not a magic solution for all of the tensions that exist. Instead, it's how we work on all of the tensions that exist. The feelings that people have about anger and fear, especially, are super warranted. There are a lot of good reasons to be experiencing extreme uncertainty and extreme concern about the future of the country. But the thing is, these kinds of feelings of fear and anger are also where people want us. There is a reason why our tensions keep getting ratcheted up. There are candidates who benefit from this, candidates on both sides of the aisle. The more frightened that people are, the more likely they are to vote for what they think is the safe option. And honestly, our traditional media and our social media also, they benefit from our having extreme emotions, because if we do, we tend to be more engaged with the media, which lets them spend more dollars of ad money. They bring in more income if people are more agitated. And so they have a reason not to help us figure out how to navigate those emotions and calm down. Being polarized, having these different, extraordinary, extreme, sometimes political points of view is not necessarily a bad thing. Polarization all by itself, not necessarily bad. Having very different political ideas from our neighbors, not necessarily bad. Disliking each other, not an inherently bad thing. Disliking each other might be unpleasant. We might not like having serious disagreements or personality conflicts with the people that live in our community, but disliking each other is not the same thing as violence. If the political situation, the polarization, the feelings that we're having, if they start to make us think of one another not as a person I don't like, but as someone who is less than a person. So in other words, if I start thinking about somebody as either less than human or having a fundamentally evil nature, that's the kind of dehumanizing that can start to cause violence. And when I say fundamentally evil nature, that's not the same as saying that a person is sometimes choosing evil. That is actually true, I think, that we can choose evil. But to say that somebody is a fundamentally evil being is to make them less than. And that is the kind of thing that can seed violence in a society. Sometimes when we talk about the fact that the situation is complicated and everybody is human and we're explicitly trying to do election violence prevention, people can get very emotional in response to that. I think that part of the reason that happens is because people are feeling so angry and so scared, and they are so centered in this sort of scarcity blame kind of place, that if you're suggesting there's another way to look at it, people instinctively think this is a person who's trying to tell me that what I know is important is not important. And that's not true. Of course it's important. And of course there are good reasons for the fear and the anger that people are feeling. So how do we respond to that? We can say things like, I hear that what you're saying is really important to you. Or I understand that you think I'm talking about compromise, even though I'm actually not. It's a really scary situation. It makes sense that you feel this way. I understand why you're angry. Sometimes I get angry too. These are not just rhetoric lines. They're not just things I make up to say to people. They are true things. I really do get angry sometimes. I really do understand how my remarks are sometimes taken as advocating for political compromise, even though that's not what I'm saying. We can say things to people like, I know that the problem seems really big, but I have learned that it actually isn't hopeless. Or I have met some people on the other side of the political spectrum, and you know what? The ones that I've met do not want violence. These are the kinds of things that are really important to say in response to people who react strongly as we enter into the idea of expanding the definition of we and talking with people across the political spectrum. That emotional affirmation is just incredibly important because all of us are ramped up emotionally. We just are, and we have good reason to be. So I hear you. I'm not trying to talk you out of what you're feeling. What you're feeling is not wrong. And the question that actually matters is what you do about how you feel. A lot of people really just need to be heard and affirmed. There are so many people who feel like nobody is listening to their concerns. They're getting barraged with incoming material, and they're not having the chance to have anybody listen deeply to the experience that they're actually having. So when you affirm that you really are hearing them and you do the genuine work of sitting down to listening, it's a good thing to remember that's not the same as affirming their ideas. You don't have to say, I think you're right about the cause of the problem, or you've convinced me and I'm on your side. It can be enough to just say, I understand what you're saying. It makes sense to me. I get it. I hear you. And then we can pivot a little bit to commonality, finding the common ground, like people on all sides of the political spectrum are having similar feelings. That's true. The reasons behind what people are feeling start to differ if you talk to people on the two ends of the spectrum. But if you're just asking what feelings are they experiencing, that's actually super common on both sides, the same types of feelings. And we can talk about shifting to that common humanity of recognizing that instead of being in a blame and anger place and saying, you know what, all people are having similar feelings in the situation that we're in this country. That's not the same as saying that everybody's right, but we're saying everybody's in a similar emotional space. And we can work together to make this better and find the ways to engage that are not likely to cause violence. This kind of listening and affirmation can really help people become more receptive to the conversation about election violence prevention. People are having a hard time knowing that they can talk and be heard. And so it's one of the most important gifts that you can give to somebody is just let them talk and be heard. And then once you've listened, to say, you know what, I hear you and I understand where you're coming from. Next time we talk to each other, I want to start moving into a section on action steps. And I'll give you one action step per video, things that you might actually be able to do in a super concrete way that can help with the problems we're facing.